Just a few years ago, the Philadelphia 76ers looked to be building a roster capable of creating a lasting dynasty. Flash forward to current day, and Philly is a shell of its former potential. Joel Embiid is almost 30, and he still hasn't reached the Eastern Conference Finals in his career. Stars have come and gone, and a myriad of poor decisions have left the Sixers stranded in basketball purgatory with no clear way out. It's time to face the facts. The process has failed. So, how did Philly get to this point? Let's take a quick trip down memory lane. The year is 2017, and the NBA draft is approaching. The prior season was a struggle as the team went 28-54. However, there were some things to be optimistic about. Joel Embiid was fantastic in his first NBA season, averaging 20 points and 8 rebounds per game. 2016 number 1 overall pick Ben Simmons sat out the entire year with a foot injury, but he was ready to come back and make his debut. The team also landed the 3rd overall pick in the upcoming draft via the lottery. The Sixers then made a big splash, trading up with Boston to acquire the 1st overall pick, taking consensus top prospect Markelle Fultz out of Washington. With a young big three of Fultz, Simmons, and Embiid, things were looking up in Philly. What the 76ers didn't account for was Fultz forgetting how to shoot a basketball. As everyone knows, the top pick in the draft had one of the most interesting breakdowns in recent history, dealing with some combination of a mental issue and shoulder injury that resulted in a drastic alteration of his shooting form, rendering him useless offensively anywhere beyond 10 feet from the basket. Fultz only played 33 total games for the 76ers before the organization gave up on him and dealt him to the Magic. To rub salt in the wound, Fultz has since revived his career in Orlando, averaging 14, 6, and 4 as the team's starting point guard last year, with his mid-range jumper returning to elite Washington form. Aside from that disaster, the 2017-18 season went pretty well for the Sixers as they finished 52-30. Simmons was fantastic in his rookie year, averaging 16, 8, and 8. Embiid took another step forward, and the team's supporting cast was excellent. Philly lost in the second round to Boston, but fans had to feel great about the direction of the franchise. Because nothing good can last with this team, during the 2018 offseason, President of Basketball Operations Brian Colangelo resigned after being caught up in a scandal with his wife running 4 separate Twitter burner accounts that were used to trash Philly's own players. The Sixers did their best to quickly move on from that saga as Elton Brand stepped up to become the team's new general manager. It didn't take Brand long to make some huge moves as he traded for superstar Jimmy Butler early into the 2018-19 campaign and acquired Tobias Harris prior to the February 7 trade deadline. Butler and Harris proved to be perfect complements to Joel Embiid, who had taken his game to the next level. Between those three and Simmons, who was having another terrific season, the Sixers were a legitimate threat to win it all. The team finished 51-31 and cruised past the Nets in the first round, taking on the Raptors in the Eastern Conference semis. As everyone in Philly knows, that's when disaster struck.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
If that ball didn't bounce in Leonard's favor, that game goes to overtime. If the Sixers win, they would have had a very real chance to win the title. Not only did the organization have to deal with one of the most shocking buzzer beater losses in NBA history, but they also had a very difficult roster decision to make. Re-sign Tobias Harris or Jimmy Butler. A number of factors played into the final decision, including the reported beef between Simmons and Jimmy, but Philly did ultimately choose Harris, sending Butler to Miami in a sign-and trade. It was all downhill from there.
Tobias Harris over me?
The 2019-2020 Sixers had potential, but COVID-19 and injuries derailed their season. Tobias Harris almost averaged 20 points per game, and this was the last true great season we saw from Ben Simmons. Unfortunately, after the bubble started up and the year resumed, he suffered a knee injury that required surgery and knocked him out for the rest of the year. Philly was effectively swept in the first round by a far superior Celtics squad. Speaking of the Celtics, the Sixers stole free agent Al Horford from them on a 4-year, $109 million deal the prior offseason. That didn't exactly work out. That was it for Brett Brown, who had long overstayed his welcome in the organization. The Sixers turned to Doc Rivers, who had plenty of experience working with talented teams, but when you consider the fact that he's the worst playoff coach of all time besides 1 year when he was bailed out by the 2008 Celtics, it probably wasn't the smartest move. Rivers was notorious for putting together fantastic regular season teams that flamed out in the playoffs, and that's exactly what happened in his first year. The Sixers finished with the #1 seed in the East as Embiid averaged 28.5 points per game. What really hurt Philly was the dip in production from Simmons, which came as a result of him losing confidence in his offensive abilities. That was punctuated in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semis against Atlanta when he refused to go up for a wide open dunk in crunch time.
Simmons, they cleared out for him. Backing his way in. Spins on Gallinari. Gives it up. Oh, he was right there.
The game is in your head. That's a dunk for Ben Simmons.
The Sixers ultimately lost that game, and that will be the lasting memory of Ben Simmons in Philly, as he never played a game for the franchise again. Simmons wanted a fresh start with a new team, but the Sixers refused to trade him until the middle of next season, when they finally sent him to Brooklyn, along with Seth Curry, picks, and other pieces for James Harden. Daryl Morey, who had joined the Sixers as their president of basketball operations in 2020, was the architect of that deal, reuniting him with Harden. The duo of Embiid and the Beard flashed serious potential down the stretch, and Tyrese Maxey took a huge step forward in his sophomore season, but Philly once again fell short in the second round, this time losing to Jimmy Butler and the Heat. Fun fact, since the Butler sign and trade, Miami has been to the NBA Finals twice. The Sixers haven't made it out of the second round. Harden signed a new 2-year deal with Philly following their postseason exit with a player option attached to the second year. The Sixers entered the 2022-23 season looking to make some real noise, and once again put together a solid regular season, finishing third in the East at 54-28. Joel Embiid finally won that elusive MVP, averaging an insane 33 points and 10 rebounds per game. Harden also led the league in assists, and Maxey took yet another step forward. After sweeping their first round series with Brooklyn, the Celtics loomed large in the second round. Philly had been dominated in this matchup over the years, but it looked like their luck was finally shifting as the Sixers stole Game 5 in Boston and went back to Philly up 3-2 with a chance to move on. Then, they blew it.
Jason Tatum, not always there when you call, but always on time.
Faced with yet another catastrophic postseason collapse, the Sixers entered this offseason with a lot of questions. After rumors of Harden opting out and leaving for Houston dominated headlines throughout the season, it seemed like he had changed his mind and would be signing a long-term deal to stay in Philly. Then, out of nowhere, he shocked the basketball world by opting into the final year of his deal, but only with the intention of facilitating a trade. Somewhere along the way, his relationship with Morey was irreparably damaged. There have been a ton of developments since this trade request. Harden only wants to go to the Clippers, LA isn't willing to give up much in negotiations, and Morey is holding out for a huge package that he will certainly not get. The latest break in that story came via a video of James Harden addressing a crowd in China, calling Morey a liar.
Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of again.
Not only has this created a very messy environment in Philly, but the NBA is now investigating these comments to see if Morey had been attempting to circumvent the salary cap in past negotiations with Harden, which would be a huge league violation. As we await clarity on that ordeal, let's take stock of the Sixers' current situation. It's fair to assume that Harden will never suit up for the team again, and they will likely be forced to trade him for a minimal return as they have virtually no leverage. Joel Embiid is already almost 30 years old and has no team success throughout his career to show for his efforts. Tobias Harris has turned into one of the worst contracts in the league as his production has significantly tailed off. Tyrese Maxey is admittedly a bright spot for this team's future, but the state of the organization overshadows his development. So, where do the Sixers go from here? I truly believe the right path is to explore trade possibilities for Embiid. In the NBA, your shelf life is extremely limited. Windows of contention never last as long as you expect, which means you have to be willing to make tough decisions for the sake of the team. While replacing Doc Rivers with Nick Nurse is a serious upgrade, it's fair to say Philly's true window shut a while ago. The ugly truth is that Embiid is 29 and has never made the Eastern Conference Finals. The star is still in his prime, but how long will that realistically last? 7-footers who weigh close to 300 pounds don't have a great history of longevity in the league, which leads me to believe that Embiid's value will never be higher than its current state following his MVP campaign. We've seen teams hold on to their beloved stars for far too long over the years, and as a result, when they ultimately have to trade them, the return package is never as good as it could have been. In fact, we're seeing that right now with Damian Lillard in Portland. If the Blazers had been willing to deal him just 2 years ago, the return would have been significantly greater than what they're likely going to get this offseason. While Sixers fans might not like it, they could trade Embiid right now and net one of the best return packages in league history. We're talking multiple rising stars and a haul of draft picks. Would you rather make that move now or try to go for the title again and risk an Embiid injury, which feels inevitable and would seriously impact his trade value? That's just my take on the situation. In reality, there are a lot of potential paths forward for the Sixers. This is a pivotal offseason that will likely determine the direction of the franchise. If they don't get it right, Philly fans could be in for another decade of misery.